Fantasy Life I, the girl who steals time. I played the original Fantasy Life when it was on the 3DS when it first came out. And the kids also played it, and they loved it. Funny enough, we all bought copies of this game, so we're responsible for 2 Steam versions and a Switch version being sold. So you're welcome, Level 5. The story of this game is that you and an archaeologist named Edward are on a ship looking for hidden treasure. The bones of a dragon push out a light and shows you the way to it. Another dragon attacks, and the bones come alive to become a bone dragon. You get on them before the boat is destroyed, and the dragon takes you 1,000 years in the past. You find yourself on an island called Mysteria. You need to find your way back to the present, and the only way you can do that is to take up a trade, or as they call it, a life. There are 14 different kinds of lives you can play as, but they break down into 3 different categories: combat, gathering, and crafting. For example, you could be a miner or a lumberjack. Maybe you just prefer to be a cook. Or if you want, you can fight monsters, so you can pick up a sword, a crossbow, or use magic to defend the realm. You are completely free to choose whatever you want to do. The game will encourage you to take as many lives as you want. That actually sounds awful. Let me put it a different way. The game encourages you to take as many trades as you can. But like I said, they call them lives. They'll give you about a 20-minute tutorial in each life, how to do the job in the world. But if you want to skip it, you can. A lot of the jobs use the same kind of controls. Most of the crafting is the same kind of push the A button quickly. Or chopping down a tree has the same controls. And feel is breaking a rock. The way you chop down a tree or break a rock has you maneuvering around it looking for sweet spots. These are places when you hit, they do more damage. You do this until the item breaks or you run out of energy. If you run out, the item actually resets. So make sure if you're going to chop a tree or break a rock, you do it with the energy level you have, or you're just wasting your time. You can also bring computer players in with you in the world. They're going to have a set life already, but they're all set at level 1, like they're waiting for you to boost them up. And it's easy to level them up. When you finish a job, whether it be mining, fishing, or even fighting, every time you finish what you're doing, the computer characters will get experience. It doesn't even have to be the kind they're an expert for. This game can feel overwhelming at first. There are just so many options and places to go. But the game rarely tells you no. It wants you to explore the world any way you want. Even if you're in the middle of a quest, you can usually just go do other things. Now, there are 3 worlds to explore. The present, which is just a world like Animal Crossing with real time taken out for the most part. There is a collectible that only shows up once a day. That's the outlier, because the rest of the village's structures can be built with just waiting on a timer, which was usually about 3 to 5 minutes. You can eventually get a robot, which will let you redesign the world itself to make it look any way you want. It was okay. I did like the zoomed out way it showed the world, as it was easier to adjust what you wanted from that angle. There's also a dungeon to explore here called the Depths. It's not that large, but it's mainly there just to progress the story. The second world you go to is the past, which is really the main world that you're going to be exploring. The story will open up different parts of the map. There are plenty of secrets to find in this place alone. The different places you explore felt varied and enjoyable. I always loved unlocking areas, as I never knew what place we were going to go to next. Finally, there's the open world called Genorzama, which I always kind of referred to as fake Breath of the Wild world. I say that because it's sort of a mix of the 2D, 3D gameplay of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom and the overall gameplay of Breath of the Wild. There are eyeballs to find, which are just towers that will fill out your map, as well as shrines. Yes, they're actually called shrines. It got to the point where they're just kind of like saying, yeah, we're ripping off Breath of the Wild, but you know what? It's fine. They have mini puzzles in them to find strangelings. The strangelings were people from the past who've been turned into objects, who are basically the NPCs you recruit. There's even kind of Koroks to find, which were buried in the ground. There were a certain number of them in each section. The whole place had potential. An open world where you could explore and find secrets. However, I think it's the weakest thing in this entire game. The main story barely cares if you even come here, to the point where it feels like they added it in at the last minute. There was an optional dungeon you could do if you want to see the villain's backstory and get a little bit of help with the final battles. But really, you could just not bother. The fake Zelda world was fairly large. It's broken down into sections, and those sections needed to be grinded in if you want to level up the materials and enemies in the area. And it was so tedious. Why not just let us level up the whole world? Why do it one section at a time? Overall, everything in this world felt pointless. You could wander around, climb the mountains, swim in the ocean, but with the exception of some shrines, small villages, or random material or enemy events, it's pretty empty. I loved the idea of exploring it, but it really got boring because every section had the same ideas. Even the shrine puzzles were consistently reused. If I had to do another one of those memory game puzzles, I was gonna scream. The world is actually more useful to grind for stuff in the after game, but grinding for parts is never fun, and they should have put more love into this area, or merged it with the world in the past. I loved the past world. I thought it was varied and had a lot of interesting things to find. This one felt like a different game entirely, and one I didn't want to play. But here's the fun part of this game. If you don't like this area, don't go! You can pretty much finish the main game and barely go here at all. If you want 100% completion, then you probably don't mind grinding, and this place might actually be enjoyable to you. Now, the story in this game takes about 27 to 30 hours to beat, but honestly, it could have been done much quicker. There's a late game quest which has you going after level 50 items, and you would think you would need to level up for that, but honestly, it's a lie for some reason. I would guess it's actually a level 20. One hit at a level 50, I got it down almost halfway. I have no idea why they misrepresented this part. If that wasn't enough, they also have a randomized dungeon called the Treasure Grove, but that was really difficult, and one you should do with friends. Speaking of, this has cross-platform multiplayer. It doesn't just cross with other console versions, but also Steam as well. I tested it with the little Wiiviewer on the Switch 2 version, and it ran perfectly. You can set up a password-protected session, or make it free to join. There's quite a few options. You can make it so people can come to your small village, the treasure trove, which is that randomized dungeon, or you can take a few players to the fake Zelda area. When I tested the original Switch version, I did see a few stutters, but it was far from unplayable. This has a fairly meaty aftergame. It gives you the ability to make the best weapons, and has you doing all kinds of things for the professor, as well as letting you finish out your other lives. There's easily 100 hours worth of content in here, if you want to 100% it. The biggest question you might have is, how does it run on the original Switch? People were really concerned when the trailers of this thing looked terrible on the Switch, but happily I can say I never ran into any issues. Loading took about 10 seconds to get into caves or new areas. It's far from a problem. It seemed to have a consistent frame rate, and it had no crashes at all. Plus there's a Nintendo Switch 2 version upgrade for less than $3, which I did buy, and I tried it out. Yeah, it worked great. Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time, was great. It felt like a mix of Animal Crossing and Zelda. I do think the fake Breath of the Wild world was a huge disappointment, and it kind of felt like an afterthought. I never had any drive to visit it. Now this is normally $59.99, and while I do wish it was a little bit cheaper, I can still recommend it as a buy. There was a lot you could do, and I actually enjoyed the story. So if you're looking for a fun adventure game which lets you play it the way you're most comfortable, then you should definitely buy it now.